So what were some of your highlights during this trip?
I think that the entire trip overall is a highlight for my life. The space that Carolyn was able to hold for all of us that were at this retreat, especially for me, as well as the beautiful space that the retreat was at, was so magnificent and it was so profoundly deep. Hi, everyone. I'm Natalia Ochoa, and I was so inspired to create this podcast because I want to share a piece of wisdom that I'm integrating into my life currently. We all have the ability to create our own reality in which we can heal ourselves. Hopefully, through the conversations I'm passionately sharing, you'll discover the power of your own intuition. Right, we are on our way to Mallorca.
Here we go.
Here we go. We are
And
on our
we're
way.
from England.
Yes, we are. Just for the trip.
Just for the trip. For a little.
For a little. Just a little. But
Where in England? We don't know. Anyway.
around.
Around. We're from around.
We're from around. Yeah, so can you take us through when we were in Mallorca, you had us do a specific prayer to each element. I just want to share it with everyone if it connects with them, because I know that when I wake up in the morning, I give thanks to all the elements and to Source.
Yeah. So one of the philosophies in indigenous cultures is, as I mentioned before, that everything is a being. So all the elements are a being, and they're addressed as all my relations. So we identify the sun as grandfather sun, and the moon as grandmother moon, and the sky as father sky, and the earth as mother earth, and all of the four-legged creatures and the insects and the winged ones and the finned ones are our relatives and our cousins. So we probably did a ceremony in addressing each of those and honoring each of those and honoring the lessons and the gifts that we receive from all our relations, and including the elements of fire. It's also grandfather fire and mother ocean, and from the water and from the air and from the earth, and so what we receive, like really giving thanks for what we receive from all those elements, and also that all of those elements are part of us, and it's all one and the same.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's so beautiful. And I know that part of the subconscious work that we were doing, you had mentioned something that our subconscious mind operates 95% of the time. And you had us ask some questions that were, what pattern keeps me safe, limited, and small? And will I have to give this up in order to reach a new level? So I'm curious if you could talk more about that.
Yeah, sure. So going back to the development of our mind and our ego, our conscious mind, our subconscious mind, all of that development happens around the first 7 years of our life. And so we don't really have a conscious analytical mind until the age of 7. And when we're moving through our life, 95% of the time, it's our subconscious mind that is what is operating. That's what's calling the shots.
Crazy.
Right? It's mind-blowing. So when we think of like those roles that I talked about earlier, and the experiences that we had from that time of where 0 to 7, that is most of our subconscious mind. That's where it's been formed. So to actually be in our conscious mind, that takes the cultivation of awareness, of consciousness. It really takes our effort and practice, because we have to bring ourselves back into that again and again.
Right.
So that question that I touched on was to help you start to look at, what patterning from those fundamental years of your life keeps you limited, right? Holds you back in a way. And what was it that you ended up coming up with?
So I wrote it down. I said, I answered that I hold my value on the approval that others have on me, which leads me to give my power away. because of my situation with my dad. I felt that I needed approval of men to validate my sense of self and feel worthy of love. And there was an added element of after you gave us an exercise and said, every time just wake up in the morning and write whatever stream of consciousness and pay attention to it. And there was like this deep fear of me getting in trouble. There was like, I'm scared that I'm going to get in trouble with authoritative figures. And I was finding the parallels like in my life that I was like scared to speak up about a simple thing that's kind of just stating my truth or stating my needs. And I shake, and I had an experience when I was little that I was told that the situation between my mom and my dad, when I was like seeing my real dad, because there was just so much conflict around it, that I had to keep it a secret or else I was going to get in trouble. And I was like around 4. And I remember my mom telling me that I would shake. So it's like, it's interesting how then I would start seeing how just that moment in time just shaped so much more of these subconscious ways that I was dealing with things.
Yeah. What a powerful reflection. Thank you so much for sharing that and for even drawing those correlations. Because that's a really big one for a lot of people, is needing that approval externally. And, acknowledging that if you make decisions and how you do things in your life is purely to get that external approval, that's going to create a lot of suffering.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you recommend someone that they're just at home do to just start getting tapped into those subconscious thoughts? I mean, I would always recommend working with someone, obviously, because they, someone that has experience, but just to start it. To
notice a situation when you feel triggered or you feel reactive. If you can bring your awareness in that moment to how you're choosing to react, that's going to give you a lot of information. Because usually when we feel challenged or there's any bit of conflict, we react from that survival place. That part of our ego kicks in. That's that childhood part of us that's showing up to keep us safe. And we don't really need that anymore. It served its purpose for us when we were younger. We're alive. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
However, we don't need that part of us calling the shots any longer. So if we can start to bring some awareness to that, okay, I'm reacting this way. I feel like I might get rejected right now. So therefore I'm acting in this particular way. To notice that that's what's happening is the first key.
Yeah. And then after realizing what the trigger is and how that comes up in life, what is our intention and what seed are we planting in order to move forward? And I put to embrace my deep feminine, that was my intention.
Lovely.
Yeah. So yeah, that's really, really special. But also, I know that part of this whole healing journey sometimes can feel or this type of work can feel so heavy, and I don't think that it is heavy, and it can be heavy, but also on the other side of it, there's so much joy. And so I wanted to ask you, why do you think joy is necessary in the process for healing and staying on this path?
Yeah, it's absolutely necessary to bring that sense of lightness. I love the saying that we can, the work we're doing is serious, but we can't take ourselves so seriously.
Yes.
So we really need to bring that lightness to ourselves. And that comes from acknowledging that we are in a messy human experience. Yeah. And it is the full spectrum.
We're all going through it. There's no, no one's not going through it.
Exempt. No one's exempt.
We're all in this together.
And honestly, anyone who puts on the image that they're exempt is living a pretty painful experience, honestly.
Yeah.
So that can help bring some compassion when we witness that. And another piece of that is that joy is such a healing vibration. It's such a healing energy for us. It fills us up in a way that is necessary. It's not frivolous. It's actually very necessary. And we think of, children and how they play and the pure joy that comes through, that is literally food for the soul. And we need that just as much when we're adults. That doesn't go away. So bringing that into the process is absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
And I see it hand in hand. Literally, I think of this and how I work with clients as well, is hand in hand of going into those places that we've buried within us, those places that seem scary to go into. And when we go in there with someone that we feel safe with, and we can meet them and heal them, and we shed that light on them, that they don't carry that weight in us anymore.
Yeah.
They don't have that hold over us anymore.
Exactly. I like to think of it, the analogy that I've come up with recently is like going to the gym. When you're at the gym or when you're working out, it's painful in that moment, you know, when you're doing something extraneous and it's just but then you finish and you just feel so light and you have energy and just like everything just feels possible and like blood is pumping through your veins. That's the same feeling that I get with healing. Like if I'm going through healing something very difficult for me emotionally and it's coming out in like either me hyperventilating or crying or anything, like even though it feels so painful, in those moments my heart feels so open. And the next day and like the week, like just afterwards, it's like I feel like I've moved through something so buried down that I don't even want to name. Like I don't even know how to name it, but the level of joy that I'm able to feel is because I am able to feel the pain.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's the yin and the yang. We have to know one to know the other. And until we know the depths of our pain, we'll never know the heights of our joy.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Oh my God. Yeah.
That's the journey of the warrior.
Exactly.
It literally is. It takes courage to know both.
Yes.
Courage to hold both and to hold that entirety of our human experience.
Yeah. And that way we can all shift together onward. You know, it's like once you just accept that, you know, because there's so many people that are in denial that there's anything that's going on beneath the surface. And there just has to, you know, just admit it. Like, it's okay. We all have it. We all have it. No one is exempt, like we said. And then like making light of it. Like I call myself a witch. You know, I laugh at myself about these, you know, my daddy issues, like, you know, whatever. Cause it's like, we have to laugh at it. It's like, we're all going through it.
I love that you brought up, you know, the denial. I think touching on denial is really important in that.
Yeah.
In that conversation. And I think it's one thing that 2020 also lifted a veil of for us on so many levels.
Yeah.
And, you know, what we're releasing, what we're moving through, if we have the courage to do it, is that denial. And when we like lift that denial and actually meet the reality of what's there, we are in such an empowered place.
Oh, yeah.
It's so empowering. So I just wanted to offer that because that's just such a key of where we find ourselves in this moment. Especially after this past year and what is being revealed.
Yeah. The walk in the park that was 2020. But speaking of which, I would love if you shared your story of your witch experience of like.
Yes. So my witch story.
Oh my God. Yes.
This is just really funny. The last place that I lived in, I was there for, oh my goodness, 10 years. And I moved early on in 2020. And shortly after moving into this place, I get a text from one of my old next door neighbors. And I lived in an old brownstone townhouse. So, you know, he could see my little back patio area. And he writes that the new tenants were outside on the back patio and talking with some friends they had over and saying, so apparently the woman who used to live here was like a real witch. Apparently she was like a Wiccan, I think you call it, or, you know. So he texted me this. I just burst out laughing.
It's hilarious.
And it actually made my year because, you know, I wrote him back and I said, well, they're not wrong. I would laugh all the time, the ceremonies I would have in this apartment. Here I am in the city and in Boston, and having these ceremonies and working with these elements and just doing these things that if anyone I feel like were to be a fly on the wall would be like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah. And like, I own it 100%. And like, I do, I love doing all of those things and ceremonies and things. And I actually had a friend of mine like live with me for like 2 weeks. And I'm like, listen, like, you're going to get the witch experience. Like, this is what I do with my time. And he was just like, everyone should live like this. I'm like, I know. And I'm like, yeah, like, welcome to like, join the club. Like, there's nothing weird about it. It's just that people, unfortunately, there's a huge stigmatized view of witches and this energy work and everything. And I know that you have an amazing way of talking about the history. If you can tell us about why witches.
Well, it goes back into the whole patriarchal society we've been in for so long, and even back to like the Salem witch trials and how women were burned at the stake, and often that was because of a fear of not understanding how these women were actually healers, how they had the knowledge of working with plant medicines, and how they had this connection to the natural life. And so that power was feared. And to diminish that power, the stigmatism of the witch was then created. And so I think that history is actually really important to know in this reclaiming of the word of the witch, that really is a woman who is a healer.
Yeah.
She's in touch with the earth. She knows how to work with plants. She knows how to connect with her intuition and to connect with other entities. And it's really a gift. And with that comes ways of moving through the world and choosing to live our lives. And I think there's a place that we end up evolving to where life becomes our ceremony.
Yeah.
And that's also a philosophy of the red path of, indigenous cultures, that life is ceremony.
It is.
And it's such a beautiful way of existing. And I know when others would come into my old home or where I'm living now, they just say, oh, I have such a sense of relief. This is like a sanctuary. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yes, it absolutely is. This is my sanctuary.
Yes. Anyone that enters my home is like, wow, it's so peaceful in here. And I'm like, yes, you're welcome. It's my witchery. Yeah. It's until people are, really, kind of opened to it. And some people still experience it and highly resist it because it's so new to them, because it takes such a time for you have, to shift to something that's new, that is kind of not the norm, because I feel like we've gotten so disconnected from nature, and we live in a concrete world, where there's cement and streets, and we're not connected to the elements anymore.
Yeah. And you're going to feel silly when something is unfamiliar. Think about any time you've started anything. Exactly. But like you said, there's so much power. And usually if there's a lot of resistance, it's because you should move in that direction anyway. That's right. That's very true. Following that resistance. And also, I would just say, for anyone who is exploring this path and feels called to, try discovering what rituals resonate with them or what ceremonies resonate with them, is to approach it really from a place of humility, of ask for guidance, ask that presence for guidance, and know that when you receive those messages, that intuition, that you're receiving the answers.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you so much. So we're actually going to go into just what a little mini session would look like for you, because I want people to be able to experience this work and see an example of what it looks like. So it doesn't feel so scary to people that are going down this path.
Awesome. Yeah. So we touched on one of the things I'm loving right now, coming out of 2020, is helping people to start to integrate that. There is a huge wealth of wisdom that we can gain from what we experienced in 2020 and what we're still experiencing. It's by no way done. So I'm not talking about it in that instance at all. So I wanted to ask you, Natalia, I'm going to ask you a few, like one big question, a few questions within that, but what would you say was your greatest lesson of 2020?
Oh God. Okay. So my greatest lesson was, it's symbiotic with a bunch of things, but I would say mostly knowing what it means to put my needs and myself before others. I spent a lot of time giving so much that I never even knew to ask myself, what did I need? I would wake up in the morning and I was already being external, doing something. What do other people need? I felt validated in other people needing my help. That's how I found value for myself. When other people needed me is how. So I was completely ignoring all of my needs, and I wouldn't listen to my intuition. And that led for me to have relationships in my life where I couldn't assert any sort of boundaries. Yeah. And I allowed for people to treat me in a way that I had the philosophy, treat others how you would like to be treated. So I would always treat everyone with the utmost respect and everything. And when I wouldn't get in return, I would suffer. Instead of like switching it and saying how I just put myself first. So it led to me having catastrophes with like roommate situations and with like a love partnership that didn't serve me and I couldn't get out of it. Because I was always just putting those other person's needs before my own and not valuing what I needed and moving from that direction. And that made me not assert my power or assert my sense of self from a place of compassion that could be easily communicated. So it created a lot of conflict because I went into that place. I became the scared little Natalia that was shaking and couldn't say anything because I was so scared to assert and speak a need that was mine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You've done a lot of good reflective work on it as you explain there.
Because there was a lot of explosive situations that came out of it. Right? Like it wasn't just like I just sat there. Like it was big argumentative experiences. It was times where like I would go out of my way to do something and then I was met with like anger and I couldn't understand. So,
and those situations happened in 2020. Were those like the catalyzing experiences that allowed you to really wake up and say, what's happening here?
Oh yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Situations that, I think I was used to conflict. I thought that conflict was normal. Mm-hmm. And when it was happening around me, all I wanted to do was be peaceful, but I kept on attracting people and situations that were very conflictive and that would not wouldn't listen to me. And that, so I, in turn would give my power away. And I'd just be like, oh, no. Like they need something, like it's like, if they need it, then like, I'll show up for them. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does completely. Yeah, that's what happens when you're raised in an environment where there is codependency and there isn't, your parents perhaps don't have the best boundaries and don't know how to teach you to have boundaries. Mm-hmm. Right.
Definitely not.
So then how that shows up, and as you touched on earlier, saying that out of those four roles, the caregiver, right, the one of that the ego starts to create as a child for survival, and your ability to give, and how you realized that, especially in some of these specific situations in the past year, which were your breaking point, so to say, of where you really lost yourself in them, that you were over giving, and how you had lost your needs within all of that.
Yeah, I mean, the perfect example was like me working for a nonprofit. which I was so grateful for the experience for, but I couldn't, I was putting the needs of the company and of the needs of the mission and the collective before the needs of myself. Things were breaking down all, like, I had to borrow money. I had to, it was just not a fun way to live. I just found myself in situations where I had to compromise so much of who I was in order to serve something greater. And I just always felt empty and depleted at the end of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So this is a huge gift that you received, perhaps maybe didn't intend to get, but received, of knowing what it means to put your needs first. So you know what it means to put your needs first. How do you do that? Tell me, how are you going to do that?
I started by understanding and knowing myself, meaning taking actions. Like, for example, I know that I need to live alone. And before, I used to lie to myself all the time because I'm very sensitive to energy. Like, I if you feel something, like, I feel it. Like, I'm very sensitive. And I was running away from my sensitivity. I hated the fact that I was so sensitive. So I was trying to one up myself and be like, it's okay, you can handle it. Let's have roommates. And that caused so much internal conflict in myself that was like number one. It was like, okay, I need to live alone. Mm-hmm. And I had to really sit with myself and say, what are I had never asked myself what my needs are. It was when I took that month off. Because after I decided to step down from the nonprofit, I probably cried for an entire month because I didn't understand who I was outside of the role that I had played, or what I wanted my life to look like. Yep. And then simultaneously, I had this tumultuous roommate situation where, of course, I attracted someone that was a taker, and every time that I would offer something would take more and more and more, and wouldn't respect any sense of my boundaries because I didn't know how to assert them, to the point that it became like, I've never had to block anyone in my life. Like, that's never been a thing, but it got to the point where I felt scared to be in my own house.
That's horrible.
Yeah, no, it's awful. It's like, and the worst part is that I couldn't even say it. I couldn't even stand up for myself. And if you were ever to see me, it's like, oh, but Natalia has no problem speaking things. But when it comes to like really conflict like this, like I become a baby, a child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you know you need to live alone. What are some other needs that you know now?
That there are days that I have to disconnect from technology and connect to nature, and that I have to be okay with whatever backlash I get if someone doesn't think I'm available in my mind, right? Like, if my mom calls me, or someone wants to talk to me, before I would be like, oh, I'm in the middle of something, but I would just answer the phone because someone was calling me and they probably need me, as opposed to being like, can I answer the phone now? Do I turn off my phone to have some me time so I can recharge? Or am I in a place to be available if someone needs me?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, excellent. So you know that is something that you need to make a priority, is time to disconnect from technology and to really connect with nature. Mm-hmm. I love that, because when we start to become gain more understanding about our energy, when we think of technology, our phone or computer, and that energy is always going out, it's very fragmented, and we start to feel fragmented. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, think of how much you're scrolling through on social media, and just, it's very chaotic. Mm-hmm. And distracting. So that becomes fragmented in our energy. When we are connected to nature, or say you're meditating or you're doing something like that to nourish yourself, the energy is actually like reconsolidating. It's going inward. Mm-hmm. So you're beginning to feed yourself on a new level. That's why you feel much more stable.
I do. I moved by myself. I created a morning ritual. I try not to turn on my phone at least 2 hours after I wake up. Sometimes it doesn't happen, and that's when I know that I'm off center. And I really try to give myself 2 hours before I start work. I had to make a work schedule for myself. Like, I'm not going to answer anything that's work related before 10 a.m. and then I have to take a break. So I put like specific timers on my phone, and I don't just say, oh, I gave myself a deadline, 8:30, no more computer or phone. So I had to like create those for myself, but I still slip up all the time. Like it's challenging.
Definitely. Yeah. So good job. What other needs did you identify?
The need of me having to work out, and the need of me taking care of my body with the food that I put in it. Because I'm a workaholic, so I can work through an entire day and not eat. It actually like happened this morning. I was just like, if it takes me 10 more minutes to do this interview, like I need food in my body. Like my body was like, I'm hungry. And I'm like, okay, I got you. I'm going to feed you.
Yeah.
Because I could work 8 hours straight, 10 hours straight, and completely forget to eat because I'm just so consumed in what I'm doing. But taking those breaks, and then also I then put myself with practitioners that were going to aid that. So I hired an Ayurvedic practitioner, and I did a cleanse in my body so I could get more connected to my body, and started the Abhyanga, which is a self-oil massage, where I started realizing that I could actually heal like my ailments, like the parts of my body that hurt. I started getting connected, like, ooh, that hurts there. And like, I had never spent so much time touching my body.
Abhyanga is a beautiful practice.
It
really
is.
beautiful practice. Yeah.
I didn't know about it, and then I started doing it. And yeah, when you spend time touching your body and knowing where the kinks are, you get such a deeper connection to your needs, which I'm like, oh, I need to release the tension on this. Like I have a lot of tension here. Like it just creates this whole ripple effect.
Definitely. Nice. So that is helping you to actually gain greater embodiment. Like you're literally coming into your body. You're touching your body. You are literally physically feeling what my body needs. And in that process too, starting to learn, like, what does loving touch feel like? Giving myself loving touch. So that's beautiful.
Well, this was part of the work that I couldn't do when I lived with someone, because that was way too vulnerable for me to even do behind closed doors. But now that I felt the freedom, that's why step one was like moving in alone. And now that I have that freedom, I can really explore. And I've given myself hugs and kisses, and like I actually feel myself. Before October of last year, like I didn't feel myself like physically, my body. I mean, I did yoga, but it was to calm my mind as opposed to actually touching my body.
Yeah, embodiment practices are so essential right now for us to really just drop in and be in our bodies, to be grounded. So this is great. So you identified the need for working out, for caring for your body. From that, it stemmed into learning about Abhyanga, this, self-care of the self-massage, and learning about your body that way. So let's do one or two more of the needs that you identified. What else?
Oh God, what other needs? Another need that I saw was that I needed to fully be able to look at myself in the mirror and love myself and see myself how I would want any romantic partner to look at me. So I would do like eye gazing, and it came with a lot of crying of me actually looking deep into my eyes for like 15 minutes at a time.
Yeah. Can you explain what that emotion was that came up when you were doing it?
Yeah, it's like I felt like I saw myself like for the first time ever. Like I felt like I was seeing the light that I am. Like when it allowed me to understand what it means to have self-love. It's not about the external things and also that I can take care of myself. Like I have my spine. And if I'm alone right now in my world, that I can take care of myself. And it just created a lot of like depth of seeing myself and just being like, oh my God, like, wow, everybody has always told me how beautiful my eyes are. And I was like, thanks. And then I actually got to see how beautiful my eyes were. And like, actually, I was like, wow, Natalia, your eyes are so beautiful. Like, I was like actually saying that to myself. I had never done that before.
What a gift.
Yeah.
The greatest gift. Especially when you consider back to one of your biggest limitations, which is that need for external approval.
Mm-hmm.
So literally in identifying this, of needing to look at yourself like you would want a romantic partner to, that you tapped into self-love, that this is the imprint, this is the feeling, this is the quality of what self-love looks like, feels like, how it's expressed.
Mm-hmm.
And you were able to give that to yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it doesn't matter. Like, it's nice, obviously, if I get it from someone else, but I know it. I see it in myself, and it's rippled into like me actually feeling sexy and like me actually feeling good about myself. And when someone compliments me, it's just like an added bonus, but I don't need it to feel like good about me.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Those compliments are not creating your value. You're creating your value.
Mm-hmm.
You're giving that to you. And so what I'm hearing as you say that is a true sense of confidence, or a new sense of confidence that you
I would
have.
say merging my external confidence that I put out in the world with my internal way that I view myself. Like, I feel like it's finally coming together. Because I have like an on switch, and when I'm going to have an on switch, like I'm on. But then when it's an off switch, sometimes it gets a little messy and lost.
So with the merging of that confidence, and you're saying how this is like rippled out, what does that feel like for you? What does that feel like in your body as you move through the world?
Yeah, it feels lighter. I feel lighter. I feel like I realize how much I love dancing, and I love expressing myself through dance. And I do it alone now, like in my apartment all the time, and sing. And I've been able to like tap more into my creativity. I feel more relaxed. Like, I don't feel so anxious anymore. It comes up, of course, still my anxiety, but I'm able to really sit back with myself and be like, no, it's okay. Or I find when I really am seeking for someone to give me a compliment, I'm like, oh, okay, it's time for me to like do some self-love.
Beautiful. I love that. That last piece is really important. When you see yourself seeking for that external validation, of recognizing that it's time for you to really practice it internally.
Yeah. And I'm able just to be happier and move through difficult things more quickly than I think I did in the past. So overall, I feel more confident about myself, and it's hard. Sometimes I like really meet my edge when things are very challenging for me, of like putting myself out there. And then I just say, okay, I got to do it anyway. If it's emotional, I cry and I release it, and then I move on.
Wonderful. That's great. So these are some really good concrete needs that you have identified out of this new awareness, right? So you had these certain circumstances that came up in the past year, these catalyzing moments that woke you up to saying, hey, I'm being completely drained. I need to actually look at my boundaries. I need to find out what they are. I need to bring in some boundaries, like really nourish myself. And so from that, you were able to identify, some of these core things of living alone, of disconnecting from technology and letting yourself really connect inward to yourself and to nature, of working out, of paying attention to how you nourish yourself through food, as well as how you nourish yourself through touch and embodiment. And that also, as you're cultivating this approval from the inside, of learning how to look at yourself through that lens of self-love, of offering yourself that gift, and looking at yourself as you would want a romantic partner to look at you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because
Good work.
thank you. Yeah, it's been very interesting last 6 months. But I think that, what it resulted to was me actually feeling, and I talk about this, like me actually feeling happy on my birthday, which has been a very painful experience for me, because it was like the day that I equated to, okay, I give to the world every other day, like the birthdays where I get it all back. And I put so much pressure on that. And I was putting so much pressure on getting it externally. So this year I gave it to myself. I gave myself the birthday of my dreams, and I was like through the moon. Like, I have had the best birthday I've ever had in my life.
Amazing, amazing. And that's how it manifests.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's how it really shows up, how we start to create it in our life. So I love that I feel like this brought us full circle to, your first question of how do we create happiness in our life? Because this is really such a concrete example that we just went through of, what was this great challenge that came up in the past year? What was the knowledge that was gained from it? What was the wisdom that was gained from it? Because when we don't stop to receive that information, we're blocking ourselves from receiving the gift. Like, that is the gift for you now.
Yeah, which I had ignored for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And I was driving myself to the ground. After that last experience, I said, no more. I said, no more. I don't want this to be my life anymore. I don't want to suffer. I don't want to anymore.
Mm-hmm. Good work. Seriously, because, when we don't receive the lessons, we stay in the same pattern, and we get that lesson again and again and again. So when we can look at a situation and say, okay, I'm in this, it's a big challenge. What am I learning from it? It might not be what I signed up for. I definitely thought I was getting some other outcome, that's for sure.
Yes, always. I mean, you always do things with the best intentions, and then...
Of course, yeah. And then, but if we really take a step back and say, okay, well, what did I actually learn? That's what is invaluable. That's what we carry with us. That's what continues to shift. So looking forward, what are your intentions for this year?
Actually, taking all of what I said and continuing to integrate it into my life, because like I said, I slip up all the time. I still have a hard time truly feeding myself. I still have a hard time creating like a workout schedule that works for me, that I can like look past. Or sometimes I wake up and my mind is going a million miles a minute and I pick up my phone. So I understand that I place those things. Sometimes I go weeks without giving myself a oil massage. But it's like, okay, I know and I have all these tools and I've implemented them, and how can I implement them more and more and more so it just becomes like a way of life for me, as opposed to just like, okay, you need to do all of these things by like 10 a.m.
Right. So one recommendation that I would make is to write them up on something, like write them up on note cards or put them on a piece of paper. And I like to get kind of crafty or creative with them, but maybe you write them really beautifully. Maybe there's an image you even want to put with them, but put them somewhere that you're going to see them and you're going to have that reminder every day. And so, because what you just identified a few, and you probably have more, but just working with these that you identified are priorities for sustaining you. And you can't do any of the other stuff that you want to do or really show up in the world the way that you want to show up in the world if you aren't full, if you're not nourished and like full of energy. So that's got to be the top priority. So putting them somewhere where you're going to see them every day. And then the next thing is to schedule them in. So I know for us, life is really busy. If it doesn't make its way into my calendar, it's easy to forget about it. So actually put it into your calendar.
Okay.
And then lastly is, all of us just need support. So sometimes we need to find the right person that's going to support us, that's going to hold us accountable, that is going to help give us more skills or more tools when something might not be working, and because life continues to happen and we continue to change. So that's where, having lots of great guided support comes in.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I know that because I've been doing this work for so long, I'm able to come up with these answers really quickly, but I just want everyone to know that it took me a very long time to come, probably like 6 months, for me to really delve into what I shared today. And it's because I have people like Carolyn and other people that I work with in order to hold that space so I can actually discover it. So with that being said, I want to ask, if anyone feels called to work with you, how can they reach out to you? How can people find you and follow you? And what are your next projects?
So people can find me through my website, which is the best way to keep up with new events and things I have going on. You can put in your email, join my newsletter, but there is really good information in it every time, in addition to what events are happening, but also tangible information that'll be helpful for your life. You can also find me on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, by my name, or Live, Thrive, Love with Carolyn Little.
And over the past few days, what were some of the things that you really just enjoyed?
I have enjoyed myself from beginning to end. I've enjoyed all aspects of the trip. I think it's so encompassing of everything. Like there was not a single piece that was left out. There was adventure, there was yoga, there was sensuality, there was incredible food.
And I used to, like, when I was really young, I was in the
Your food is being
on another level.
This is what we think of your food. It is absolutely delicious. We are making so many sounds as we eat every piece.
Those first few bites were just pure orgasmic.
There you go.
Letting yourself receive the pleasure of such deliciousness is what a gift. What a gift.
Oh, I can taste that I'm eating real food, and that's like,
I feel like so.
I feel connected.
I'm recording.
So for me, the sense of the food is not visionary. It's not any other feeling than taste. I feel like colors of explosion are happening inside of me as I taste this food, because the ingredients are put together so well that I can feel the actual taste of the food that is brought out by the flavors of the way that everything is cooked and put together. And I think that that's something I've never experienced before. These past 5 days have felt like a month of my life because of how overall encompassing it has been. So I think it touched on every single aspect. I love it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to thank you so much for your time and for your wisdom and just for everything. I hope that everyone can gain something from this episode, because I know I did and I continue to. And just to end things off, I always like to end things off with a little dance party. Thank you. Mwah. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for joining. If you found this podcast enlightening, please like, subscribe, share, and follow Power of Your Intuition _podcast on Instagram. This is available on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube, and you can join my newsletter at nataliachoa.com.